Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to go over 3 things I absolutely love about the GFC, and then also cover 3 things or a couple things that I really dislike about the GFC. And at the end of the video, basically discussing if I would purchase this tent again, if I had the opportunity to do so. Now, first things first, I have spent quite a few nights in this tent. I have ran it through its paces in colder weather, so I've camped when it's been 20 degrees Fahrenheit, even colder, using a diesel heater. I have camped all the way into the low 90s. So I've taken this tent through some pretty extremes. I've camped in weather, I've camped in snow, I've camped in rain. So I do feel like I have a pretty good understanding and ability to give some accurate feedback to you guys out there who are potentially looking at getting into a GFC or even a similar canopy style rooftop tent. So a little backstory and information about my purchase of the GFC and all of that. So I put my deposit on the tent in August of 2022, and I did pick up the GFC at the Belgrade headquarters actually in October. So my wait time was a lot quicker than previous wait times and also wait times that are currently happening right now. So that is something to consider. There are a lot of other locations that have popped up now in terms of install locations for GFC, all the way from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast, Denver, Seattle. All of those regions are now being covered, so you don't have to come all the way out to Montana, Belgrade to get it installed. I would say though, for the overall experience, it is an incredible thing to see and meet some of the GFC employees. Now, at the time of purchase, I opted for no rear window, no back window, and that was basically just due to privacy. I didn't want to be parked on a trailhead, and having that rear window option basically allowed individuals to see what was inside. Now, you can always tint that. You can make it, I've seen people use 5% tint on that back window and you can't see in. Personally, I just didn't want the window, okay? So that comes down to personal preference at the end of the day. Now, the only thing that I did add for an additional option on this tent is I did do the Tangerine Dream in terms of the tent color, and then I did opt for the 2 side windows up on the top. Kitted out, my total price for install and pickup at the Belgrade headquarters was $8,300, and again, that was purchased and picked up in October of 2022. So now the first thing I really want to discuss, and one thing that I really love about GFC as a company is, first off, everything is made in the US or America. So that for me was a huge thing. Whenever you buy a lot of those rooftop tents, roof nest, CVT mount hoods, all of those, whatever it may be, a lot of times they are coming in from across the seas, okay? So GFC is big on being made in the States, in Montana here. Living in the state of Montana as well, that was also a really big selling point. If there was ever any warranty issues, work that needed to be done on the actual tent, I was super close. The other thing that I really love about GFC is the community around it. So if you look online on the forums, GFC is probably one of the first pioneers that created this style of pass-through wedge-style canopy tents, okay? Now, obviously, there's Alucab, there's Vagabond, there's Super Pacific. There are a ton of companies that are on the market now. But as far as I'm aware, there is not a single company that has the amount of toppers or canopy tents out there that GFC does. My build is 4407, and I know right now there's probably about 55 or 6,000 plus of these style canopy tents on the market. The GFC forums are an incredible source of information when it comes to tinkering and adding on things to your GFC tent. So for me, the first big thing, again, is just the community aspect, being made in America. The parts are high quality as well, and if warranty work was ever needed to be done, for me, I'm very local, and now with all of the other locations around the States, that is also another added benefit that not a lot of other companies have currently. Now, the second thing that I truly love about the GFC is the weight. Like I said, there are a ton of campers out there right now. There's the Super Pacific, there's Vagabond, there's AT Overland, Lone Peak is another company that is up and coming. But when you look at the weight of all of the other canopy style tents on the market, a lot of them, at least for a mid-sized truck, are still pushing 350 plus pounds. Okay, so the GFC is one of the lightest options on the market, and also, as far as I'm aware, probably one of the most durable and strongest in terms of quality. So being on a mid-sized truck, specifically a Tacoma, where I really want to watch the weight that is being added to this type of vehicle platform, the GFC came in first for me there. Now, this may be a con to some folks, but to me it is a pro. And as the GFC sits, it is a very, very basic camper, okay? I always have to constantly remind people that are looking for a canopy style camper like the GFC, or trying to compare it to other companies on the market. The GFC is a bare bones style camper that you, the user, can tinker with and add stuff to, okay? So what I mean by bare bone basic is it is a basic Lego set is the best way that I can describe it, and you, the user or the buyer, can essentially add or build different things with it, okay? So there's no fancy way to route wires on the inside. There is no fancy compartments to hold stuff on the inside. Inside the tent area, there's nothing fancy in terms of compartments and stuff to hold cell phones, cables. There's no lights ran or anything else like that. It is a bare bone camper, okay? Now, in terms of price points, obviously it's going to depend on a mid-size or a full-size vehicle, depending on your application. But the GFC is also still one of the cheapest options out there. A couple years ago, when there were some other companies that were up and coming, there was a little bit more of a competition in terms of pricing. But when you start comparing it to something like a Super Pacific that is coming in at $13K for a base price model for the Tacoma, versus 8,300, it starts to become very apparent the price and differences there. Now, if you are trying to compare this to an Alu cab, good luck, okay? It is not even in the same category as something like an Alu cab at this point, or even an AT Overland that has insulated walls. I would not even compare it now to a Super Pacific, because again, a Super Pacific is in a totally different category in terms of what you are getting for the price that you're paying. Now, I think another pro that we have to discuss that could be a con for some people is the actual overhang of the GFC. So the GFC probably actually has one of the smallest overhangs, and also the shortest overhang, meaning it's not going to come too far off the roof. So if you have issues fitting into a garage, I know that can start to become a concern once you start adding a camper onto the back, that fitting into your garage may become an issue. I feel like the GFC is probably one of the best for that. It's not too tall, and it's also not too long. Now, why the actual overhang may be a con or a pro for some folks is the amount of room that is also available inside. So again, you're going to have companies like Super Pacific, Vagabond, and then Lone Peak is also another one that's just coming out. They have overhangs that come well past where the GFC is. So I know I just saw a photo of where the Lone Peak is coming out to, which I will put that up. It's coming out almost all the way to the front of the truck here. Now, this is obviously on a 5-foot bed Tacoma, so the overhang and how much it does come over the actual roof of the truck is going to depend on which model or vehicle you're putting it on. For me though, specifically, I really like this, okay? It still provides enough room inside the tent. For me, I'm 6'1". I sleep comfortably in there. There's no issue with that. It still allows me to place stuff up on the roof, which is a huge benefit. Once you start having the tent or the overhang come out to, a spot like this, you lose a lot of available space to mount or store stuff up on the top if you have a roof rack, okay? Again, it's going to be a pro or con for some people, but for me, it is a pro because I can still store my Max Tracks, my WeBoost mount up there. I've also seen some people put storage boxes up on the top of the roof as well. And again, if you start moving this overhang out further and further, you're going to lose that space and the potential ability to mount or store anything up on the roof itself. The downfall is you do lose some of that extra space in the actual GFC itself, and the biggest thing that people complain about or have an issue with is not having a pass-through. So the GFC uses a transformable floor, I believe is what they call it. Movable floor panels is the way that I would describe it. There's 3 floor panels that you can essentially move around. 2 are squares, and then 1 is a larger rectangle. A lot of other companies are either doing a complete push and slide or a push up with struts like the Alu Cab or the Vagabond as well, I believe also uses that approach. Obviously with the GFC, you don't have that, but again, the way that the floor is set up in terms of the movable floor panels is a big pro in my opinion, because it gives the user a lot of potential options and ways to use the inside of the camper. I've used it as a desk inside. You can use it as a spot to cook and have one side open. So really you are limitless on what you can do with the floor versus some of the other companies. You only have the option to just slide it all the way in completely or just push it up and not have any access or even a table to use on the side. The last thing I really want to highlight on with the GFC is obviously I've already mentioned the community that is behind the company, the forums, the resources that you can find online in order to tinker with this. Seeing what people have done with their GFCs on the GFC forums online is incredible. It is truly a tinker's paradise when it comes to changing, adding, or modifying a platform to your own liking, okay? The GFC customer support is unmatched in my opinion. As you may have known or as you may not have known, GFC had some issues in the past with some water intrusion issues, specifically campers that were in the Pacific Northwest where the rainfall was an absurd amount, okay? Living in Montana, I can say that I never had those issues. I never experienced water intrusion of any kind. Speaking with other people that are in the state of Montana, I can say that they've never experienced that either. So it was definitely a issue where if you were in an environment where heavy amounts of rainfall was occurring, then yes, it was a possibility. GFC took action though. They fixed that and they released an update for free for the campers that basically eradicated all of those issues. Anything related in terms of maintenance, small fixes or issues, I have seen the GFC team go above and beyond in terms of making their product right, and they truly do stand behind everything that they make. In terms of quality, it is excellent. Everything on this canopy camper can be replaced or upgraded for a very small fee. All right, so let's get into some of the cons with the GFC. I've used the tent, again, for 30 plus nights. I have a very good understanding of this tent now at this point. I've used it in all types of climate. So snow, I've camped when I've gotten over 6 inches of snow that night. I've used the diesel heater, obviously. I've camped in rain, and I've camped also when it's summertime dry. So the tent has been put through a variety of elements, and I've seen how it performs in all of those elements as well. I will say the biggest complaint for me, and from what I've also seen from other users, is the actual ventilation of the tent itself, okay? So I came from a CVT mount hood, which is, again, a wedge style tent like this. And something that you often see in a lot of those tents, or even just other rooftop tents that, you know, could be a soft shell tent, pop-up, whatever it is the ventilation. The ventilation is always placed at the highest point on the tent. Okay, so when condensation forms, when the temperature drops, and if you have to have everything closed up inside the tent due to rain, condensation often is going to form at the highest point, which in this case is going to be that backside there. Okay, with the roof being honeycomb, okay, when condensation forms, it does run down the top of the roof. And another YouTube user who did a review or just overview on the GFC basically described it as a waterfall effect. Now, obviously, the environment that you're camping in, the temperature that you're camping in, and also the ventilation that you have in the tent itself is all going to play a huge role in the condensation that's being formed when you're out camping. Now, in terms of the window setup and how GFC did it, because it does apply to getting ventilation inside the tent, to be honest, I don't understand why GFC did it like this. I don't know if they were trying to reinvent the wheel in terms of tent design, but again, this is probably one of my hugest complaints with this tent is the condensation issue, obviously, which I've done some small interior modifications to combat that, but also the window design. When I had my CVT mount hood, it was fantastic. The screen for the bug netting was actually on the outside of the tent, and then this fabric, the blockout fabric or whatever you want to call it, was on the inside. This worked out extremely well. The other thing too with the CVT mount hood, just using it as a comparison, is it had full zip around windows, with the bottom being actually where it started and almost like a U-shape zip. The GFC does not have that. The GFC is basically a U-shaped zip, but it is open at the bottom. Okay, so even if I have both sides all the way zipped down, the bottom still allows air to come through, which is fine if you are camping in a warmer environment. But if you're camping in an environment where it's potentially raining, it's snowing, and it's windy, snow will come in underneath those windows to a small degree. So it's something that you have to think about. So just to go over the windows situation here. Everything is completely zipped up, as you can see on the side windows here. And what I mean by having a full zip is essentially having the option to completely zip this off. Okay, now this is common in a lot of rooftop tents where you can completely zip up the windows and the netting. I've camped in the CVT mount hood with a wicked side wind and a wicked amount of rain, and I was completely bone dry. Okay, I don't know if I would trust that with the GFC because of this gap opening on the bottom, which I believe they claim is for ventilation. In theory, it is a great idea, but from a practical use when camping in colder environments where you potentially are facing a side wind or a wind where there is also snow and rain involved, it's going to get in here. Okay, it's a guarantee. I've camped at a climate where, again, I've gotten over 6 inches of snow overnight, a slight breeze, a steady wind of maybe 10 to 15 miles per hour, and it gets in here. A very small amount, but it does. Okay, I've seen some folks on the forums do things to completely seal this up, but again, I don't understand why GFC didn't just make a full complete window zip or do the half zip where you can zip half of it down from the very top to get some ventilation there. So let me paint you a scenario here where the window application, how it's set up, is not going to work, okay, or may not work for some folks. If you're camping when it is fall time, early spring, temperatures are maybe down to the 40s, even just high 40s, low 50s, you're still going to get condensation in the tent if everything is closed up. Okay, so if you can, open it up. Opening the back window usually helps quite a bit, as you can see there. However, if it is now 45 degrees or 50 degrees and there is a light drizzle with rain, you are not going to be able to prop this back window or the side windows open without getting water inside, which is unfortunate, okay? So you're left with really only one option, and that option is to basically close the whole tent up to prevent water or the wind coming in. And the result is an extreme amount of condensation that is building up inside because of the lack of ventilation, which if you look again at a lot of other tents on the market, CVT Mount Hood, Super Pacific, some other bigger brands, they have a vent at the very top of the tent that is covered. So no matter if it's raining, if it's snowing, if there's wind, when you are breathing, that hot air is escaping some way or another through those small covered vents at the very top of the tent. So on the topic of windows, how I have the window propped up right now is a common thing that you will see in other rooftop tents, okay? A lot of companies provide this awning pole, whatever you want to call it, pole mount system. Have something in the T-track of the GFC here along with these clips. It's not a standard GFC thing, okay? So all of those have to be purchased aftermarket, and unfortunately they are very expensive, okay? There are two companies that you can purchase the blocks from, and then the whole kit itself. It will run you anywhere between $70 and $90 per window, okay? So if you want to open up all three windows in this fashion, multiply at least $70 or $90 times 3, and it's going to be an additional cost right there just for that. Okay, so you're looking at least $200 if you wanted to do all three windows in this fashion. Okay, I personally think that should be something that GFC should include, or actually just, you know, include for a little bit of a cheaper price, because how many of us are going to want to open up the windows and act as an awning or a shade? Now you can roll the windows up, but again, if you are experiencing even a light drizzle, a light rainfall, or whatever it may be, you're not going to be able to roll the windows up without getting wet inside. Where at least if you do it like this, and there is no rainfall and potentially the amount is very slim, there is a chance that maybe you could prop this open as shown here and still get ventilation inside and still be protected from the rain. But just something to note, in order to do the basically shade or awning setup as it is seen here, it is an additional cost. GFC does not provide that. All right, so we are up in the GFC now, and we're going to go over some things that I have done personally to help mitigate some of the condensation issues. Again, what I think GFC could do as a whole to help mitigate some of those, and then just go over the interior space of this, and also why I like the layout in terms of the floor and how it works along with my application. Okay, so first off, you will see that the headliner is something that I've added. This is not a stock option with the GFC, but this is something that was in the CVT Mount Hood. And if you do some research, some companies will apply a carpet headliner in an attempt to help with condensation. Again, that is why I have added this. It also acts as an awesome patch wall, so you can apply patches from all your adventures. The other thing is blocking out light. Okay, so the roof is a honeycomb material. This may be a pro or con for some folks, but it lets in a ton of light. Even in situations where there is a full moon, a lot of light still comes through. So this carpet headliner helps block out a lot of that. Now this carpet specifically is mold and mildew resistant. It is indoor-outdoor carpet, so make sure if you do apply something like this to check on those properties. Now, in terms of the mattress that I am running up here currently, this is the Hest Dually Long. It is 4 inches memory foam, temperature resistant. It has been fantastic. The stock GFC mattress is just something that wasn't comfortable enough, and really the mattress options or additions is going to be entirely a personal preference in terms of what you like in terms of comfort. Now, moving on, I have added that indoor-outdoor carpet on the bottom as well. As you can see, otherwise it's just this honeycomb material that is below the mattress normally. I added this on the bottom again to help with condensation issues potentially, and also it just adds an extra bit of comfort or quote-unquote upgrade to the camper. Okay. So with the GFC, we have 2 floor panels, so you can move those, and now you have all of this space. Okay. It's nice because if you are a solo traveler, you can basically get up and change in the morning, which works fantastic. If we move this, ooh, it's hard to do this with one hand. Hang on, we're gonna have to come. But if you move the long rectangular piece to essentially be what I would consider parallel with the camper, you have essentially this whole space here. Okay. I often will use this as a desk, which works fantastic, and then you could also put this on the back portion here and look outside if you truly wanted to. For me specifically, how the floor situation is set up with the GFC, it works great. Okay. Now there are the other companies on the market where you can essentially have this back portion as an empty space or a pass-through. Super Pacific has it where there is 18 inches. So if you really wanted to, you could get up and or in and out of the tent or the sleeping space specifically without having to move any of the floor panels. Again though, with that application, you don't have the ability to lay this out sideways to create a desk, to essentially put another panel on the sides and whatnot. You only have that option of essentially pushing it all the way in. Companies like LU Cab, obviously you have the strut one in the back, but again, you're still limited. So again, the floor setup could be a pro or a con for some folks. In my book, it is a pro the way it's set up. I really enjoy it. I like it. Yes, it's not as maybe spacious as some of the other companies out there, but for me, it works fantastic. And if you are okay with having to move the floor out of the way in order to get in and out of the tent from the bed, it's awesome. Okay. The ability to use this as a desk, cooking stuff in here. I've cooked some meals. I've whipped up coffee in the morning in here, and you have this incredible view out the back of the tent, which is awesome. And then again, just to cover the window situation here. So again, as you can see, the bug netting is on the inside of the tent, which truly doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand again why they did it like this. This portion, so this material that would be blocking the elements is normally on the inside. So normally this is flip-flopped where the screen is on the outside. This material is on the inside, and how it worked with the CVT mount hood is, again, so this was completely zipped all the way around, and then on the bottom it was sewn across, so it was basically a full or complete zipped panel. I had the vents for ventilation at the top, but if I ever needed it a little bit more, I could always just half unzip this top and it would be just enough to allow some amount of ventilation to come through. But if I ever needed to completely zip it up in the elements where potentially snow, rain, or wind was an issue, it was completely fine to zip that all the way up, as I had ventilation at the upper corner there, and condensation wasn't a concern. Okay, so that is the inside of the GFC. So those are some of my pros and cons that I have just observed with my ownership of the GFC. Overall, I am quite satisfied with the tent itself. Again, I didn't go into buying the GFC thinking it was an Alu cab where it would be basically completely sealed off from the elements in terms of the bed, the water issues, etc., stuff like that. I knew dust would still get inside the bed of the truck. That is very common with a lot of canopy tents like this. Okay, until you start spending a lot of money, you can't start to expect to get a $15,000, $16,000, $17,000 tent for $8,000. All right. So going into a GFC, you have to realize those things, that this is not that quality of a tent in terms of matching what an Alu cab or even a drop-in camper like a four-wheel camper is. Okay, it will never be that, and you have to go into that or into that purchase expecting it not to be that. Okay, now would I purchase the GFC again? There are a lot of other options on the market now, and if I was to potentially go out there and know everything I know about the GFC now in terms of the way that the tent is designed, in terms of the fabric, etc., stuff like that, it would be tough. I do absolutely 100% love this thing though. Okay, again, the community behind the company, the community on the forums is awesome. Everyone that has provided input and provided solutions to things that will make the GFC better overall is unmatched, in my opinion. Like I said, now there's probably at least 5,500 of these on the road right now, which is incredible. As far as I'm aware, no other company has that on the market right now. Not even Super Pacific, Vagabond, any other companies like Topo Toppers are still on the new and upcoming, where they haven't pumped out that amount of toppers yet. The other thing too to consider is when you are pumping out that amount, so you have over 5,500 campers on the road now, more issues are naturally going to arise. All right, so if you have 500 campers on the road, the chances of stuff coming up or potential errors, fixes that need to be fixed is a lot less likely. Okay, so once you have more options, more products out in the real world, stuff is bound to happen, and the higher amount or the number of campers that you have, the greater chances that those are going to start to happen. Okay. Would I purchase the GFC again though? I'm split on that. Okay. There's a lot of other options on the market that fix a lot of the complaints or issues that a lot of consumers have with the GFC itself. I personally really hope that the owner and the GFC engineering crew take a lot of those considerations into their thought process when designing or implementing new changes into the redesign or updates of the GFC. I personally think that just fixing the tent issue, specifically the ventilation issue that leads to condensation issues, could mitigate a lot of hesitant buyers. Okay, because it is a common issue that a lot of folks are talking about, obviously, on the internet, of the lack of ventilation, the condensation issues, the doors that don't fully zip. Like if GFC just implemented some changes to those three things, I would be beyond stoked with this product. But it is something you have to consider, and if you are okay with the way that the doors and the windows are set up, the potential issue for condensation in certain environments, again, it's going to depend on where you live, then I would say the GFC is a fantastic product. Like I said, I'm not expecting this to be a $13,000 tent like the Super Pacific is. I'm not expecting it to be a $15,000 tent like the AT Overland is, that has insulated walls. It has much more space in terms of movability in inside the camper itself. The GFC is never going to be that. Okay, so we have to stop expecting the GFC to meet those standards and still be a tent that is under $10,000 for most applications. The used market is huge on the GFCs as well. Again, you have a lot of GFCs that have been bought, and you're going to have a lot of GFCs that are being sold just because people move on, people change to different setups, etc., stuff like that. And I have seen the V2 campers go for a stellar price, like $6,000, $7,000. And in today's market, it's really hard to find a topper and a tent for that price. So having the ability with the pass-through and all of that is an added addition. Okay. Hopefully you guys enjoy this video. Again, hopefully GFC takes some of these requests, I should say, into consideration when looking at making changes for the actual tent redesign. Personally, if they dropped a V3 tent material that was a slide-in for the V2 camper, I would buy it. Like I said, the tent issue, the condensation, the inability to zip the windows all the way around is probably my biggest complaints, and honestly the biggest dock in this tent for me. Dropping it down from like a 10 out of 10, probably down to about an 8.5 or 8 out of 10. Okay. If you guys have any questions, comments, your experiences of owning a GFC, leave them down below. I want to create the space to allow an open forum, open communication spot. So, other owners can potentially see some solutions, and then potentially future buyers before getting into a unit like the GFC. All right. Thanks again. If you like this video, remember to subscribe, like, leave a comment, and we'll see you in the next one.